she is. We're gonna squeeze on here together and hope to not push each other off.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Quite honored to be able to be here today and co-hosting with Sarah. I actually met Sarah through Sharon at the end of January, and we were having a dinner event, and I'll never forget because prior to the event, I was telling Sarah about an aspiration I have around how to leverage technology to have a meaningful impact in the lives of 1 billion people. And so then as the evening got started, we sat at dinner and Sarah had us introduce ourselves to each other. And I introduced myself and was ready to pass on to the person to my left. And Sarah said from across the table at the other end, "But Cindy, what about the 1 billion people?" And I thought, oh, yeah. And so I shared that aspiration. And on the way home that evening, I was thinking about the other times in my life that I'd had the courage to share an aspiration, maybe before I'd even realized what it fully was meant to be or that I'd had it worked out. And yet at those times of my life when I shared with others, I actually found that it was the strength of others that gave me strength to actually move ahead. And it's actually one of the ways I got to Unilever. I was changing jobs and I'd been offered a job at another company. And I was telling a headhunter, I said, "Oh, but do you know where I really love to work?" I said, "I'd really love to work at Unilever or P&G. And they said, "Well, I don't have that account. But why don't you just call the global head of talent and tell them that you're interested?" Now, I'm far more introverted than I appear, and there was no way I was calling the global head of talent and saying, "Oh, I'm Cindy, and I'd really like to work for you." But what I did do is a couple of nights later, I was having dinner with a friend, and I told her the story. And she said, "Well, I actually know someone who knows Jane Moran, the global CIO. Do you want me to pass your resume along?" And 2 weeks later, I had an offer from Unilever. So I think the message that I would give to all of you is it's when we bring clarity to our ideas, where we share the vision that we have, that we actually can bring it to reality. And so I've decided to actually join the Leader's Voice course together, that Sarah's putting on as part of Ginger, to see how can I better articulate the vision I have and how do I actually bring it to life in a new and meaningful way. I think the other thing that I've kind of learned is sometimes when you don't have confidence, all you need is a really good dose of courage. And it's through repetition, it's through doing things, more often and putting yourself out there more often that you actually, I think, develop the confidence that oftentimes comes with experience.
For example, speaking up.
For like today, she's like, there was 900 people that wanted to do this, and I thought maybe I'd just call you and see if you wanted to do it with me.
No pressure, Cindy, no pressure.
I think it's when you put yourself out there and you say yes. So what I would tell you all today is, dare to dream big, to be bold, and to jump and trust that the net will appear. So it's really interesting when you think of all the things that we've just talked about and who as individuals have impacted you and what kind of system change has that resulted in. And I know for me, probably the one person I can track back my belief in myself was to a lady named Marilyn McRae. I worked with her at Mars. She started at Mars in the typing pool, and after 30 years retired as the IT director of a global IT organization. And it's amazing because Marilyn used to help women and you didn't even know she was doing it. She believed and had a passion about diversity before it was, the new topic of the day. And I talked to her right before this session and said, I'd really love to talk about you. And she said, well, what did I do that was so special? And I think so often each of us don't understand the impact we have on others. I took over as CIO of Africa when I was working at SAB Miller, and I did my first town hall, and the number of women that came up to me afterwards and said, we didn't know that a woman could have that job. Okay, so think about you as individuals and the things that you do that may on a day-to-day basis feel really just the normal way of working. But think about the impact of those that are working with you, who see what you do. Because it's actually, if you think of all of us in the room, if we can impact 10 people and those 10 people impact 10 people, how could we really start to change the world? I talked earlier about the fact that you don't have to have the confidence, you just have to have the courage. Because I think the more we stand up and we do things, the confidence gets stronger and stronger over time. When I first went down to Africa, I met with a lady, and I was doing a lot of diversity and inclusion things, and we were talking about many of the things that came up similar to today. And she said she'd been asked to be the dean of the Gibbs School of Business. And she was like, I don't think I can be the dean. And her boss was saying, okay, well, if it's not you, then who? Which of your peers would do a better job? And as she thought about it, she couldn't recommend anyone else. And so think about the ways that you can look at opportunities to say yes. Maybe you're not as comfortable, maybe you're not as confident, but if you say yes, I think those things will start to come. What would you do if you knew you wouldn't fail? How would the world be better if you took the resources, the money, and the ideas and you brought them together? That you raised your own voice and your own visibility on behalf of, the rest of the world. Because if you knew you couldn't fail, I think more and more people would actually, take the opportunity. So again, I encourage you to dream big. I encourage you to look for new ways to have impact. But more importantly, just raise your hand and jump. Because the net will always appear.